That was fun. That's the last time I'll be dinging the bell here in the MAGGIANO'S. So if we could all stand real quick. And this is our last MAGGIANO'S meeting before we have our new president coming in. So let's just all take a few minutes to just to mingle with our cable guest, and we'll look forward to our program today with Richard, which I'm looking forward to this very much.
Richard, how are you?
I'm good to see you. You never miss your match. I figured you would today. Yes, it's a widow call.
Today out of the blue.
Yeah, well, she had, I'm going to do another speaker dropped out. And she had heard
Walt's Friday morning Bible study.
not that I know, but
That was the topic of conversation this morning.
well, she went to the last one.
Okay.
Again, somebody dropped out, so I moved expanded for so my answer to that is when they say, will you look at my stuff?
Okay, everyone, if we could all remain standing, I'd like to have Leo Avila come up, and he will do our pledge and our invocation and the national anthem.
All right, let's bow our heads. Lord, I'd like to pray for all those that are suffering in the world, especially going through the adverse weather that we've had, and with hurricane season upcoming. I'd like to pray for all those in wars and conflict zones that are suffering from hunger, that we pray for them, Lord. And I'd like to pray for our club and our members that we have a productive meeting and an outstanding weekend. Now for the pledge. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Thank you, Leo. Play ball. Okay. Happy Bucks. Someone's got to have a happy buck. Anyone? Richard? Happy Bucks. There you go. Happy Bucks.
Kathleen.
Okay, so we're all celebrating another fantastic Ronald McDonald Monday. We served 60 dinners. It was terrific. And this was a great Monday because we had new people who had never done this. So don't be afraid. Even if you don't think you can cook honestly, if you can chop or stir, you know, I will help you. So always think about it and join in. We had 2 new members, Robin Lynn and Morgan Hare, join us. And the McFarland tribe moved in. I'm telling you, Dawn and Paul came with their adult daughter, Chloe, and they just took over the cooking of the chicken and peppers. It was wonderful. We had Brussels sprouts and real mashed potatoes and a salad to go with it. So anybody need a recipe for 70, let me know.
I'm happy that Alan Wynn is not wearing shorts.
Richard, Jeff over here.
I'm happy. Thank you, Richard. I'm happy that my son is here. I'll introduce him in just a minute. But also, there's a fantastic athletic competition underway in Omaha, which some of you may be aware of. It's called the College World Series. And there's a wonderful team from College Station that has made it to the finals. And so now we're going to go head-to-head with Tennessee. First game, it's a 3-game series for the finals. And first game's tomorrow night at 6. So we'll be watching.
And you're wearing maroon and
And
all.
wait, I got to put something in there.
Yeah. Oh. Any more? Happy Bucks? There we go.
My happy buck today is that yesterday I finished my cardiac rehab, so no longer have that.
That's a blessing. Thank you, Alan.
Okay, I think I mentioned last week about my mom. She was in the hospital last week after a fall. My happy bucks is because she's doing really well. They moved her to CC Young for probably 2 weeks of rehab. That was this past Sunday evening. So she was only in the hospital or ICU or remaining like 16 hours after surgery. So she recovered really well. So she's doing well, but she still, you know, obviously has head wounds on both sides of her head that she's going to have to deal with for a while. So if you can just keep her in her prayers still, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Absolutely. Any others? Go.
This isn't a Happy Bucks issue, but it's a issue about C.C. Colley. I know most of the people in the room know C.C., and he's battling some health issues right now. I know he was invited to participate in 4th of July parade, and I've had several conversations with him, and he says he's not up to the task. So please keep him in your prayers. C.C. Colley.
Thank you.
And he is up to certain tasks because he sent me a birthday congratulation a few days ago by email. So it's kind of like Cece's on top of that.
Oh, Cece's on top of everything. It's amazing.
I was in a car accident, and anyways, my car was totaled, but I'm excited. I should have my new vehicle on Tuesday, so I'm excited about that.
Yes. And you're excited
Oh.
you're standing here.
We're just happy you're all good. Can I owe $1? And I owe you happy buck.
I'm excited to be promoting the 4th of July in my June issue that just came out and is hitting the home. It's in UP on page 9 and an article about our Grand Marshal.
That's great.
So,
Any more? Okay, guest. See Richard for your guest. You have a guest? Have them stand.
Thank you, Richard. I mentioned my son before. I'm very proud. Some of you have met him before. This is my oldest son, Sam Brady. He's a straight A accounting major at Texas A&M, and we're so proud and happy that he's got a paid internship with an accounting firm this summer. He'll be starting in just a few weeks.
Congrats. Any other guests? So we're all good. Mary, Marketplace Advertiser.
Great day. We're celebrating the Marketplace Advertiser, VISTA Bank, and the VISTA Bank family have been involved in Rotary for many, many years. In fact, their Rotary International president was part of the family, and his name was Ed. Ed, I asked that. Ed, and he, in 1961, was the International Rotary. So this family, the McLaughlins. And Vista Bank now, we are so fortunate to have a little 30-second video I'd like for you to watch.
Tell me I can't do it. You wouldn't be the first. I'll just keep living life on my terms, risking my capital, creating the jobs. Sure, it's not easy. That's why I only work with the best. So, go ahead. Tell me I can't do it. Then watch me. Vista Bank. Entrepreneurs banking entrepreneurs since 1912.
Great video.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you, Vista Bank. I'd like to call on Alan Wynn to speak to the parade, and which, as you know, is coming up very quickly. When? July 4th. We all should know that.
Well, I am unfortunately the bearer of bad news. I would like everybody to look over at Philip Bankhead. He used to be such a happy-go-lucky, fun-loving guy. Now he's down and dejected. He's just a shell of his former self, and you might be asking yourself why about now. And that's because very few people have taken the time to sign up for his walking and standing marshal positions. There are quite a few positions left to help out with it. This is a very important part of the parade, and so I want you to hear my plea is, help me help Philip. On your tables, there's a sheet that has various names on it and various positions that we need to fill for the parade. We need you to confirm that you're listed somewhere on that sheet. If you're not and you think you've signed up for one of the positions, we don't have a record that you've signed up for that position. So please help us out. Fill it out. And everything. Remember, this is our premier event. We need everybody in the club to help. Everybody can and should do something. But also remember, do it for Philip.
Thank you, Alan. Now, Lee Wagner will be our membership minute right now, and I'd give it to Lee.
Hey, that hurts. So, I was part of the Legacy of Leadership class last year. Our mission was to enhance our membership and to retain our members. And it's going to be important. You know what? It was important in 1905 when this organization was founded. It's still important. It's going to be important every year from now on. But I want to encourage you all to ask a friend to Rotary, like our friend Jeff Brady asked us to last month. It's really important. It wouldn't hurt to have a little elevator talk, a little short thing. The service above self works if you got nothing else on your mind, okay? That really does work. The last week, Philip Bankhead and this year's cohort of Legacy of Leadership introduced a program that I thought was really outstanding about this vending machine for books at a school, Jack Lowe Elementary in South Dallas. Pretty cool project. And it's one that I thought, it's typical of Philip Bankett and his group to come up with something really kind of innovative like that. And it's a way we can reach out to the community and do things that are good. But we've also got to remember that for us to keep doing good, we got to have folks that are members of this club. Now, I confess to being an in-person person. And by in-person, I mean sitting here in this room or with friends at projects, whatever it is that works for me. I like to be present. So invite a friend to come to this room, to Maggiano's. It's really important. Our relationship with this organization, with Maggiano's, is long-standing, but I don't think it's permanent. And if we don't show up here, they may say, well, you know, maybe you'll need to find someplace else. So I want you all to remember, we've lost 19 members this year so far. 19. That's confirmed. Could be a few more. We've gained, if you count the ones that are in the pipeline, 15. So that's not really the trend we want. That looks like we're going down, doesn't it? We want the uphill trend. So I only bring up that news because it's, I really enjoy Rotary. I've been in this club since October of 2001, right after 9/11. Jody Ray, Carl von Bieberstein, I can blame them for it. It's meant a lot to me, but it's meant a lot to me because of the friends I've made, the action I've taken, the projects I've been involved in. But truth is, and I stood up here for a whole year when I was president, I said after every introduction of a meeting, I want to have fun doing it, and we do have fun doing it. So let's just keep that up. Let's invite some folks here. Let's get some new members in the club, and let's keep them here.
Thank you, Lee. It's important. It's important, guys. A couple announcements real quick. Again, dues are due. And I think we're down to a pretty good little number now, but maybe like 15 members, so we won't call anybody's name out, but otherwise, get your dues paid, please. And then also the Installation Awards banquet's next Friday. We will be at OZONA, and you probably should see on your table this little QR code to scan. We need to have your attendance in by Monday. Lori, is that right? Monday's the latest, so we can plan for it. So please do that. We will welcome in your new president, Nolan, which will be great. And then, so please do that. And now the raffle drawing. Patsy, what's our total up to right now on the raffle? Patsy, what's the total up to now?
The total is $1,795.
$1,795. Richard. What's the last four numbers? 9779. Who's got it? Oh, Jim, woohoo! I think is this your first time or second? Third, oh my gosh. Gee. Okay, where's the deck? His odds are pretty good. Yeah. For on check, take it real quick. 9779. He's good. Oh, 6 clubs. It's getting better. Here you go, Patsy. So I'm so looking forward to our program today. You know, as president this year, we always have in our hip pocket, in the event that our speaker doesn't show up. We've had some classic speakers not showing up. The one that I most recall was when we had Commissioner John Wiley Price coming to speak, and the room was packed. I mean, absolutely packed. And Jeff, I forgot the Red Ship. He heard about this, maybe because Lori had put on the program memo recording. Come see John Wiley Price speak. I mean, the place was packed. I had 3 guests that day, and I don't bring a lot of guests, so forgive me. But Brett ambushed him, and then we had to pull out that backup speaker that day. So Richard's our backup speaker because unfortunately our program wasn't available. But this program I've been wanting to do all year, and this is the last effective program, and it worked out. But he's going to speak about Bonnie and Clyde.
And you know, the thing about John Wiley Price was he walked into the lobby down there, he saw Brett Shipp, he pirouetted, turned around and went to his car, didn't even come upstairs and say, sorry. I mean, he was mad. So anyway, the stars have aligned for today. Anyway, it's the 90th anniversary this May of the ambush of Bonnie and Clyde in Gibson, Louisiana. But it's more than that. Sarita's in the middle of trial right now. Lindner and Barrow, the niece and the nephew, the niece of Bonnie Parker and the nephew of Clyde Barrow are litigating with her client, Crown Hill Cemetery, where Bonnie is buried, to try to get Bonnie's body moved over to Fort Worth Avenue to Western Heights Cemetery to be next to Clyde. So we'll talk more about that. She's on Emma's side. Bonnie's mother never wanted that. Of course, whether Bonnie wanted it or not, some people, Jeff has said, maybe in the last 30 seconds Bonnie thought, I don't think I want that. but she did write the famous poem, you know, upon the title of this book by Jeff Gwynne, that's really about the best. Go Down Together, the true untold story of Bonnie and Clyde. Go Down Together comes from Bonnie's poem. Then we'll go down together. At some time we'll go down together. And then she says we'll be buried together. And she was more poetic than that. But then she says some will grieve, the law will be relieved, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde. So if you want to take her at her poetic, she wanted to be buried next to Clyde, we'll be buried together. But maybe not. And Emma was not going to let that happen. She said he could have her during her lifetime, he can't have her now. And so, but you know, and truly, now, are we here celebrating criminals? We're actually celebrating a piece of Dallas history, and they've taken on folklore status. And so we're remembering our own history, and it was wild and woolly. And it was a little different. They're now national. Certainly, it was always sort of national. Around here, it was well known. I've already talked, Rob Eggemeyer and I were talking about, he's got family that employed Clyde, and Alan and I both had grandmothers who were at the various funerals. You know, and you'll find people whose relatives were robbed or accosted, or they're all over the place. And so it's our story, and it's a bigger Dallas story of what happened in that era. Now, before we get to that, I would want to differentiate. Let's call that the public enemies era. It just right after the Depression started in 29, 30 through 36. This was known because in the 20s, before the Depression, of course, that was the era of Al Capone, Dutch Schultz, you know, the big organized crime folks, and that goes on still, but it was all about prohibition, rum running, prostitution, gambling, Chicago, New York. These people who were the early 30s, the public enemies, and that's something Hoover came up with, public enemy number one, that kind of stuff. These people were kind of Midwesterners, Southwest, Midwest, Central area guys, kind of Lone Rangers, doing it pretty much themselves, not big gangs. And they were more like kidnappers, bank robbers. And what I thought I'd do is let's go back. We'll keep that one up after I finish with this. But these are the public enemies of the early 30s. George Kelly. My mother would be really proud to know I collect wanted posters from the 1930s. But George Kelly, you know George as Machine Gun Kelly, kidnapper, bank robber. He was taken alive in Memphis by the FBI. And of course, when they took him, he raised his hands and he went, "Don't shoot, G-men." And that's where that came from, government men. Don't shoot, G-men. He spent the rest of his life in Alcatraz. And then the next one is Bonnie and Clyde, probably. That's an FBI poster that was about to be sent out, but then they were killed. Hoover would have loved to have been part of that. But it really wasn't an FBI operation. We'll talk about what kind of operation it was later. But that is in May of 1934. And go to the next one. John Dillinger. Friend of mine, long dead, Marvin Thomas, was a 19-year-old waiting at a cafe in Chicago in June of 1934. A guy ordered coffee, and he brought it to him, and he looked up, and it was John Dillinger. And he said, I served it, and I backed up and left, and he left a nice tip, and I didn't want to see him anymore. But the next month, Dillinger was an FBI operation. Dillinger was ambushed. The lady in red betrayed him as he was coming out of the Biograph Theater. It was an FBI operation. Melvin Purvis got him, and Hoover could be kind of jealous about that sort of thing. He always held that against Melvin Purvis, that he got all the glory from that sort of thing. But anyway, Dillinger, July 1934. Next one is October of 1934. Arthur Floyd, better known as Pretty Boy Floyd. He was cornered in a gunfight in Ohio and killed. Another FBI operation. The whole point of this, Hoover was saying, this is public enemy number one. This is public enemy number, and the FBI was coming into its own. And it was necessary because in this era, law officers often bought their own sidearms. It was the Depression. These people could knock over armories and have automatic weapons like Brownings and things. So, and they could cross state lines, and the sheriffs had to drop off, and the next state picked them up. We needed an interstate national policing agency, and Hoover used this era to make the FBI what it was. And so they got Pretty Boy Floyd in Ohio in October. November of 1934, Lester Gillis, better known as Babyface Nelson. Babyface Nelson, in a running gun battle, was killed up in the upper Midwest in Illinois. And so he died. You see him one right after another, this public enemy, that public enemy. And all of these, but Bonnie and Clyde, were FBI operations. The FBI was gaining luster from all this. Alvin Karpus, the Karpus Barker gang, in January of 1935, in a lake house in Florida, Fred Barker of the Karpus Barker gang and his mother, Kate, known as Ma Barker, were killed in a gunfight with the FBI. Doc was not part of that. Arthur Doc Barker was later captured, put in Alcatraz, died trying to escape from Alcatraz. But the Karpus was actually the brains of the Karpus Barker gang. You've seen the movies about Ma Barker. Harvey Bailey, who was one of the great criminals of that era, said Ma Barker couldn't organize breakfast, much less organize a gang. And so that was all Hoover propaganda, because it was embarrassing shooting a 65-year-old woman as part of this. So she became Ma Barker, the brains of the gang. She could barely fix breakfast. So anyway, that's January of 1935. Fast forward a year, Alvin Karpus, the brains, is still out there. And in early 1936, they get a tip. He's in New Orleans. But this time, Hoover gets his wish. They set it up. Karpus doesn't know what's going on. They set it up where Hoover can be right there with a gun and go, Alvin Karpus, you're under arrest. And so Hoover was finally okay with it all. And with the arrest of Alvin Karpus, who lived till 1979, Alvin Karpus, that was kind of the end. So 30 to 36, that's the era of the public enemies. And Bonnie and Clyde were part of that. But our part of that, and of course the movie Bonnie and Clyde in the 60s with Dunaway and Warren Beatty playing the role, that made it truly national. And a lot of you may have seen in recent years Netflix's The Highwayman. That's the story of how the execution team was gathered. We'll talk about that in a minute. But a thing to remember in all of this is and did I finish with you, Sarita? Because I just think it's just the stars aligned. she's in the middle of a trial right now that will be a week long or more between Crown Hill and the Parker and Barrow families about whether to move that body or not. So what's the chance of that? You've got to report what happens later. I'm sure it'll be in the newspaper. But this is really a story of Dallas history, too. A lot of people don't realize, you know, we know the Depression started with the stock market crash in October of 29. But what we don't realize is really about 1919, agricultural income really dropped. The First World War was over with, and all these farmers in the Midwest and down into Texas could grow crops, but they couldn't make a profit out of it. And all of a sudden, it was kind of like a recession for farmers all through this area. And all of a sudden, all these poor farming families in all these rural areas down that whole band, and certainly in Texas, started going into the cities looking for work. Everybody had a different way of dealing with that. Dallas' way of dealing with that was to send them across the river. West Dallas, Cement City, the Devil's Back Porch. You know, that no running water, lean-to shacks, kids can't go to school, no jobs, not welcome across the river in gleaming Dallas. You were caught in West Dallas. That was our answer in 1920 and forward. And amongst some of those poor families who came from the country were the Parkers and the Barrows. Emma Parker, her husband had been killed in a work accident. She's from Rowena, out around San Angelo. And she came with her daughters, lived with her parents in Cement City in West Dallas. She had pretensions. She thought they had a pretty classy family who'd hit hard circumstances, tried to dress the children well and, you know, and send them to church and all that sort of thing. That was Emma. But what do you do when you're a girl in West Dallas? You can waitress, I guess. Prostitution's an option, actually. You can waitress, but the options are limited. And now the Barrows came from Tellico, a little farming town in Ellis County. Henry and Kumi came up in a wagon with a horse, and he became a junk man. You know, picking up junk. First couple few weeks, they lived under the wagon. The older boy, Buck, was already in Dallas. Elsie and Clyde and Marie all came up with the family, and you know, lived under the wagon, started building kind of a lean-to sort of thing, and trying to make their way. Luckily for him, a motorist hit his horse and killed it, and he got some insurance proceeds. So they were able to build a little bit better. But they lived in that area right at Borger and what was then Eagle Ford Road, which is now Singleton. All this stuff is disappearing very quickly on us. That gas station on Singleton looked like the old one. It really wasn't, but it looked like it. That went down a couple of years ago, got bought, knocked down. But so Borger and Singleton, that corner. So that's the way you lived. And what did you do? Well, Buck was already into this. For a young man, you stole chickens, you stole bicycles, you stole cars. You couldn't get a job anyplace else. It really kind of led to a life of crime for many in that part of Dallas. And so in that way, it's kind of a history of who we were, and we just need to understand what that was in the 20s in Dallas. But the individuals we're talking about, Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie Parker, petite, smart little girl. Neither she nor Clyde ever got beyond a grade school education, just not in the cards. Thought she wanted to go to Hollywood, wanted to be a star. She was kind of like a poet. She liked to write poetry. And she just needed a man she could admire who could help her go forward to meet her dreams. Well, at 15, she married Roy Thornton, and he was not the man. Roy ended up in the pen shortly afterwards. Bonnie remained Mrs. Roy Thornton for the rest of her life. She never divorced Roy. He was in the pen this whole time. But Roy was not the meal ticket for this. She and Clyde met in like 1930, and it was instant attraction. You know, Clyde was a snappy dresser, proud guy, hard time getting a job across the river. In fact, when he started getting jobs after he started stealing some things too, every time something happened, the police would drag him in and interrogate him. Employers don't like that. And so he worked at United Glass, he worked at Bama Pies, but he just couldn't get it started. And you know where this is ending. This is ending with stealing cars and getting arrested and getting in the Texas prison system. And so that's what happened. And so in 1931, you may say, what is your interest other than surfing a Dallas folklore legend? Well, my interest is for 25 years, last part of his life, I represented Ralph Fultz. Ralph was the first and the last of the Barrow Gang. And in fact, a great book has been written about Ralph by a local historian, John Neal Phillips, Running with Bonnie and Clyde, the 10 Fast Years of Ralph Fultz. So Ralph got me interested in his background in all of this. But Ralph and Clyde met on the paddy wagon headed for the Easton Prison Unit of Huntsville. The Texas prison system in the early 30s was not any place you want to be. Easton was a prison farm. They worked in the outdoors and all that sort of thing. Often the trustees were put in charge of supervision. You had mounted guards with rifles and things, but trustees were in charge. Clyde was a nice-looking young man who got repeatedly raped by one of the trustees. He was kind of a short man. He got his revenge. He ambushed him from the back with a pipe and killed the guy. Nobody could trace it to him, but his resentments toward the Texas prison system were building very quickly at this point, and so he wanted to get out. He did not know his mother was in conversation with Ma Barker, our governor, Miriam Ferguson was our governor. She did a lot of pardons. In fact, in that era, somebody would say, "Pardon me," and they go, "Oh yeah, Ma's already done that." She and her husband Jim were the prior governor were big pardoners. So Mom was in negotiation. Clyde didn't know that. There was a way out of the prison unit, and that was to maim yourself. Doesn't that sound awful? Clyde cut off his toe. People don't realize Clyde Barrow always had a little limp because he cut off his toe. That got him out of Eastham, and he went back. Ralph got out. He went back. They hooked up with another great Texas crime figure, Raymond Hamilton. And Hamilton and Ralph and several others, and certainly Clyde. And at this point, Bonnie probably never shot anybody. You know, Bonnie was along for the ride, but she was a co-principal in all these things. And so, I just listed some kind of vignettes. I need to be careful with my time here. We're okay. People are expert about this. Mark and I had so much fun during the pandemic. This was, 2.5 years ago maybe or so, did a YouTube on Bonnie and Clyde. Well, that's 2.5 years. Over 60,000 people have gone to that site. And you read all the comments, but as I understand what they're saying is they're debating all the little points. And, you know, this is the scholars of Bonnie and Clyde. It's a cult almost. It's, you know.
There's over 100,000 comments.
Yeah, 100,000 comments on that 1 hour I did. But you know, no, she didn't really say that. No, he didn't really do that. No, people are really into this stuff, and so I enjoy it because it's a history of Dallas. It tells us kind of who we were, what the Depression was like, and it's taken on a folklore status. And so, long and short is, you will have people talking about every little venture. They kind of looped when Clyde liked V8s. He wanted a big engine. He wrote a funny letter to Henry Ford complimenting him on his powerful cars. Clyde drove in socked feet and drove fast in a big V8. They knocked over armories. He loved to collect Browning automatic weapons. So that's why they were executed the way they were, because in the highwayman, Kevin Costner comes out as Frank Hamer and says, stop, or says something. I thought, no, they didn't. They just rose out of the bushes. We'll talk about it in a second. Because that car, they were so much better armed than any law officer they would ever come upon. That car was a dangerous thing when you saw it coming. But anyway, they did kind of loops. Early on, Clyde and Bonnie and Ralph tried to knock over a store in Kaufman. In that era, people carried guns, well, now again, people carried guns with them, and you started doing things. People came out and started shooting at you. And that's what happened to them in Kaufman. And anyway, Clyde got away in the car, but Bonnie and Ralph got stranded, and they were arrested. Ralph was a career criminal. He was sent off. Bonnie was put in the jail in Kemp, but she didn't have a record when they did it at Kaufman. They let her go the next day. And so these are all kind of little vignette things. People started dying. Clyde was driving, and others were in the car, and a man was killed in Hillsborough in a store holdup. A lot of these aren't real glamorous. John Dillinger thought that Bonnie and Clyde were small operators, incompetent small operators. He felt like he was the real bank robber. But you had stores in various places. Well, there was a killing in Hillsborough, but where finally there was no going back was over on, it wasn't then Winnetka, but it's now Winnetka. If you know the Wesley Rankin Center, there across town, right on the back, there's a duplex. That they may sell that may be knocked down. It's still there. I'm waiting to see what happens. But in 1932, they were looking for Raymond Hamilton, but it was Clyde Barra who was there. And Officer Malcolm Douglas from the Fort Worth Police Department was part of that group. Clyde came up, and there were shots fired, and he killed Malcolm Davis. And when he killed a law officer, there was no going back from that point forward in 1932. Like I said, Bonnie was kind of along for the ride, unfortunately for her. Clyde started killing people, and his resentments went so deep. Well, after that, Stringtown, they would loop. Powerful VH, you cross state border, sheriffs drop off, you got a new set of people. You go from Texas to Oklahoma, into Kansas, into Missouri, into Iowa, into Arkansas, into Louisiana. You just keep moving around all the time. And that's what they did. At Stringtown in Oklahoma, a little place off the road on your way to Tulsa on 69, there was a dance. He and Raymond Hamilton were in the car, and some officers came up, and 2 officers were killed by Raymond Hamilton at Stringtown. So we're just getting in deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, all these loops they always made through all these states, they always came back to family. If you saw The Highwayman, and it's a fun film with Kevin Costner and Woody Harrelson, they were always in contact with family, and law knew it and was trying to catch them that way. There were Coke bottles and lights turned on and off, and all kinds of ways of signaling each other. And every once in a while, the families tried to get together. Well, they were getting together at Sowers Road in Irving. It's now kind of out toward where Esther's Road is. It's all paved over now. Schmood Schmidt, who was the sheriff of Dallas County, Schmood Schmidt thought he had him. And I think Bonnie may have gotten shot in the ankle, as I remember. But they didn't get him. A family gathering at Sowers, they tried to get him, and they didn't get him. And so off they went again. And you're going to be offended by all this if you're a real Bonnie and Clyde person, because they get into the weeds on this stuff. And then they went here, and then they went here, and then they stayed here. I'm just kind of skimming the surface. But a big shootout happened at Joplin, Missouri, in a court in Joplin. Law thought they had him again. Big shootout, officer killed, they got away, all of them. But one thing they did not take with them was camera full of undeveloped pictures. And all those pictures you see of Bonnie smoking a cigar, holding a machine gun, heels up on those were gag shots. Bonnie was kind of embarrassed by that, because all that got published later after Joplin. And so they made it out of Joplin. They were better armed than the people who were going after them, almost always. Platte City, Missouri. This is kind of toward the end. Platte City, Missouri. They were surrounded again. They shot their way out. Except Buck was now traveling with his brother Clyde. His wife Blanche was traveling with them. You know that from the movie. In fact, later, Blanche was still alive when they made the movie. She was retained as an advisor, and she got so mad. She said, Estelle Parsons played me like I was a screaming horse's ass. She was so mad at the way she was portrayed in that movie. But Blanche got some glass in her eye from the bullets hitting the windshields. Buck was hit in the head and lost a little bit of his skull. I mean, he had exposed brain matter. He was not going to survive. But they put him in the back and they hauled on off, crossed the state lines. That was always a good thing to do, to go from Platte City, Missouri to Dexfield Park, Iowa. You'd get across the line. But somebody saw them, and they were surrounded at Dexfield. Bonnie and Clyde got away again. Buck they took because he couldn't move. He died within the next couple of days. Blanche they took because she could barely see out of one of her eyes at that point. And off they went again. They ended up in Commerce, Oklahoma. And this is covered in the Netflix series. They ended up in Commerce, and another couple law officers were killed. Oklahoma law officers were killed in Commerce. And but one of them was taken prisoner. He had been slightly wounded, and Bonnie nursed him and let him go. And he asked her, "What would you like me to say to the press?" He loved it that she let him go. She said, "Just tell him that I don't smoke cigars." You know, she was so embarrassed by those pictures. "I do not smoke cigars. Just tell the world that." But anyway, what really happened, what really signals the end, happened on Dove Road in Grapevine. It's Easter Day of 1934. Henry Methvin, Bonnie Clyde, and Raymond Hamilton were all in the car. They were parked down a road, and some motorcycle officers were coming past. One of them had just been married. It was his first day as a motorcycle officer. They saw this car and just thought not much of it, but they needed to investigate. They went over, and they were both shot and killed. If you look at Netflix, it will show Bonnie going out and shooting the wounded officers. Bonnie didn't shoot anybody. In fact, if anybody who knows Carl Schieffer, Carl used to be Swiss Avenue Bank. Carl's retired now, but that was Carl's grandfather that said Bonnie did it. He said, "My grandfather couldn't see past his nose hardly." He was standing in an adjoining property. He saw this. It was either Raymond Hamilton or Henry Methvin who did it. It wasn't Bonnie. Even Carl will tell you that if you ask him. But that was a newly married, first day on the job, motorcycle officer, 2 officers killed like that. That was the end. Ma Ferguson said, "We need to end this." And that's when she hired Frank Hamer, longtime former Texas Ranger law officer. He went, played by Kevin Costner in the film. He went to Manny Galt with the Texas Department of Public Safety, former Ranger. He knew him. Manny was played by Woody Harrelson in the movie. They got together and they started trailing. Wherever Bonnie and Clyde went, they were trailing them all the way, trying to find them, but always just behind them. And they were to be an execution squad. You weren't going to arrest Bonnie and Clyde, or like Kevin Costner does in the film, say, "Stop." You weren't going to do that. Everybody knew what was in that car. It was an armory traveling down the road. So what they did is they followed them. And ironically, what had happened before Dove Road even, where Netflix series started, Clyde was so upset. Now this is February, so I got a little ahead of myself. I'm going to go back a little. In February of 1934, Clyde decided he would get his ultimate revenge on the Texas prison system. He would bust into Eastham. He would take out Raymond Hamilton, he would take out Ralph Fultz. Lucky for Ralph, Ralph was moved the day before to another part. That's why Ralph lived till 1993. Anyway, a guard was killed, a horseback guard was killed. Raymond Hamilton was gotten, and two young men, Henry Methvin and W.D. Jones. All these people are a composite in the movie. The Pollock role is a composite of all these other guys. So they were taken. They all piled in the car. They all got away. Raymond Hamilton peeled off immediately. Methvin stayed with him, and that's why Methvin, although Hamilton was back there on Dove Road too. So, but they went their various ways. But Methvin, who had been rescued inadvertently, they didn't even know him. He just got out. Methvin is the one who was the traitor. His dad, Ivy, decided that maybe his son could get off. Henry had been part of this killing in Commerce, Oklahoma. Maybe they could do a deal if they betrayed Bonnie and Clyde and get his son out of a death sentence. Not real swift, because Ivy didn't realize there were multiple jurisdictions. You know, some could promise something, but not everybody could promise everything. But anyway, you know it from the movies. What happened is they were in Gibson, Louisiana, around Arcadia in Bienville Parish. Ivy Methvin, Henry's dad, was well known to them. Ivy pretended to have a car breakdown, and he was by the side of the road, and Clyde came. The execution squad was in the bushes. That squad consisted of Frank Hamer and Manny Galt and the sheriff of Bienville Parish, his deputy, a couple Dallas officers whose names you may recognize, Ted Hinton and Bob Alcorn. They both knew Bonnie and Clyde. She had served them at the various cafes where she waitressed. They were the execution squad. They were in the bushes. Clyde stopped to help Ivy Methvin, the dad, with his broken truck. The crew rose up. Shots. The pictures that were taken afterwards are still smoky. I mean, there's still smoke in the air. The gun-riddled car and all that sort of thing. It was an absolute immediate execution. The bodies were brought back. And how ironic is Henry Methvin that they inadvertently got out of, who ended up betraying them. But the bodies were taken into Arcadia. It was that era, like our grandmothers going to funerals. They were people, as the car went by, the bodies were left in the car. We're grabbing at watches, we're grabbing at a piece of clothing, souvenirs, that sort of thing. The bodies were sent back to Dallas, where there were two separate funerals, one at McCamey in Fort Worth in Oak Cliff for Bonnie, and one at Sparkman Below. The old Below mansion was a Sparkman funeral home at that time. Each one of them, 7 to 10,000 people at each one of them. Back to Sarita's case, Emma didn't want any part of her daughter being buried with Clyde Barrow or even having a joint service with Clyde Barrow, and that's why you had two different services and two different burials. I mean, it was a major thing. The sad part, a really sad part afterwards, Clyde was buried at Western Heights Cemetery there on Fort Worth Avenue. Used to have to get a key from Buddy Barrow or the Dallas Housing Authority, for whatever reason, had a key if you wanted to go in. They've made a place now where pedestrians can go in without permission. You can visit the grave. It's in the corner at Western Heights. Bonnie was buried at the Fish Trap Cemetery over where the Reunion settlers are, over by Pinkston High School. But Emma always thought that the neighborhood, Emma lived till 1944. She started thinking that the neighborhood was changing. You know what that means. And so at her death, she wanted Bonnie to be exhumed and buried with her at Crown Hill, which happened. And so Bonnie's buried at Crown Hill. Sad part, these people were so poor. They were always poor. Kumi Barrow, the mother, Emma Parker, the mother, and the death car all riddled with bullets. A local entrepreneur sent them on a state fair tour with the death car and paid them for it. So the two mothers toured with the death car for a while, for a few months. Then in 1935, you'll see this picture on Goff's on the wall. It survived the fire. It's on the new Goff's wall. A picture of the harboring trial that took place in 35 when family members were prosecuted for aiding, abetting, and harboring Bonnie and Clyde. So that's a little postscript. Now, of the people, and I've run out of time, so let me just sum it up. I'll just sum up. Ralph lived till 93, went straight, gave talks, worked for Buckner's Orphans Home, raised a family. Blanche lived in Seagoville. I never met Blanche, and she out on Cedar Creek. She died in 88. Raymond Hamilton, Bill Decker, who was Smooch Smith's assistant. A lot of you knew Bill Decker, I'm sure. Bill got the jump on Raymond Hamilton, took him alive. He was executed a month later. Justice ran pretty fast in those days. He'd already been convicted. He died about a month later. But maybe the most profound statement that was made in this whole thing was made on the tombstone itself. You can go in and look at it. Clyde's tomb. I love Bonnie's. It's kind of like the world's made better by people like you. It's a cute little thing, but Clyde and Buck were buried together. The sad part was the Barrows could not afford two tombstones. And so knowing that Clyde would follow Buck shortly, they had a joint tombstone made up. And of course, Buck was already on it because he died. And if you go out there, they try to clean it up as much as they can, but you'll get little plastic guns, old liquor bottles, spent shells, all the stuff they pile on that tombstone. But just to end it, the thing on that tombstone turned out to be really prophetic because the family had it inscribed, "Gone but not forgotten."
Richard, thank you so much. I mean, I could be up here another hour listening to this. I mean, honestly, I think I saved the best for the last. That's one of the best programs I've had all year. I love the story, and Sarita, I'm so happy you need to bring him as a witness to the trial. But again, guys, next week is the installation and awards banquet, so please don't forget to use the QR code. And then I'm going to have Jill Jordan come up here and do our four-way test.
Okay, one last plug to sign up for the parade. And remember, this is your one opportunity to walk in a parade with a beauty pageant winner, so please sign up, everybody. All right, if you all would, please join me in the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, first is the truth. Second